Action. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Action Podcast, Paul's Old Time Movie Classics. And today we are going to be reviewing the movie The Killing, which came out in 1956, directed by Stanley Kubrick, and you can watch it now on HBO Max. With me, of course, is Drew Stewart. Drew is
Hello,
my
sir.
Drew is my companion here on the Paul's Old Time Classic Movies. And like I mentioned, this was directed by Stanley Kubrick. He also directed, if you're not familiar with his work, he's also directed The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and Spartacus, amongst other films. And he also wrote this along with Jim Thompson, who also wrote The Getaway, um, and also Paths of Glory, which Stanley Kubrick also directed. And then Lionel White also contributed to the screenplay. And this stars Sterling Hayden, Vince Edwards, Joe Sawyer. Cast is not a lot of big names. Sterling Hayden's obviously the big name, but everyone else is pretty unknown. At least I don't really know him. But yeah, quick premise. So this is a heist film. Crook Johnny Clay assembles a five-man team to plan and execute a daring racetrack robbery. I wrote a long present that was a premise that was way too in depth. So that's the basis of it. IMDb rating 7.9. The budget of this was 320,000. I couldn't find how much it actually made. But Drew, why don't you get into what was your favorite thing about this film?
There was a lot of different aspects that I liked. I'm a big film noir person, and I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, so I can't believe that I hadn't seen this until now. So I enjoyed watching it. Um, Unsurprisingly, I thought a lot of like technical prowess to it. Kubrick's a genius, even that early in his career, he was doing some interesting things. I think for me, the thing that I was drawn to the most was sort of the jumping back and forth with characters, plot lines, and time.
Yeah.
Um, and because, a lot of movies have done that moving forward, and it's possible it was done before this film. I don't know that I can remember a film prior to this where it did that. So for me, that kind of jumped out at me. It was just sort of the back and forth in time, having to follow that thread. You're kind of seeing things that are happening and then going back to seeing how it was set up for certain parts. I thought that was super interesting, especially for a film this old.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was saying here, audiences were struggling to kind of follow along with it. And so Kubrick actually went back and edited the film in a linear fashion, but it made it even more confusing. And so it ended up being released in the form that it is. And this was obviously a huge influence on someone like Quentin Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, with the cutting back and forth. But yeah, this is definitely in my head one of the first films that pretty much was non-linear. Um, I really liked once it got down to business. I really liked it. I mean, you can definitely it. I do think, and I'm going to kind of answer some of the other questions all in my answer, just because I can't not say some of the other things.
Sure.
But I, the film is slightly dated. I don't think really the narration worked that well, but I think they had to do it because I don't think audiences were quite ready for, like you're saying, like this innovative way to tell a story. But
Right.
once like obviously, like the first thing I thought about when I was watching this film, I'm like, oh, this is Ocean's 11, you know what I mean? But like the newer version.
Right.
And obviously I think that movie was hugely influenced by this film. And so there's definitely greatness within this film. I think, again, at the end of the day, it's very entertaining. It's a very good heist with a plan. But there's just so many better ways to tell that kind of a story that would have made this movie so much better. But unfortunately, again, it was so innovative. I think he was literally trying to still kind of figure it out. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
it kind of hurts it, but also at the same time, that's what happens when you basically do something no one's ever done before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But ultimately, like I said, once it got into the heist, it was really fun to follow along and watch it. And I even thought of Beverly Hills Cop 2 when I was watching this, because that one has a racehorse heist. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I thought a lot of that stuff worked. Um, I thought the girl story I think could have been a little tighter. Um, that I liked the purpose of it. I just, again, I think we're just dealing with different time periods, so I think some of that stuff just wasn't, you know, executed 100%. But overall, I thought it was a entertaining film. Again, definitely influential because I can just see again some of these modern films really taking from this film, and I think that's the most important achievement when you're watching this film is that it was really avant-garde when it came to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, Now I know I kind of answered these questions, Drew, so I'm just gonna kind of answer you and I'll go off what you said. But do you think this movie holds up?
I'm going to equivocate a little bit. Yeah, say yes and no. It's interesting what you're saying about the female character, the love interest. Like, I agree with you. Like, she was an incredibly electric performer. Like,
Yeah,
she was, um, like that character, I think was important, and I think she did a great job. But I
yeah,
also think that it was very indicative of like Hollywood in general and film noir in particular back then of the females being very two-dimensional. It's almost like all men are writing the scripts and all men are the directors, and they're trying to imagine like what a female character would be, but they don't really try that hard. And I
yeah,
kind of feel like that's how her character was. So
yeah,
I think that, and I'm going to actually reference that again when we get to our top five, but so I think that there are those pieces that don't like I agree. Like a lot of films now that do the nonlinear have done so a lot more deftly. I also think like I think you made a really good point that the audience wasn't ready for this then, right? Like there's no DVD, like there's no DVR, you can't rewind it. Like they were going to the theater, they had never seen anything like this. The narration was a little bit clumsy. So I think a lot of those pieces made it a little bit clunky and dated feeling.
yeah,
However, I think that the storylines hold up. The heist is great.
yeah,
Uh, some of the just sort of themes are similar, cons trying to make good in the world. And one of the scenes that stuck with me the most was the scene where the guy was going into the parking lot to shoot the horse, and like his interaction, like that scene was I was on pins and needles the whole time when
yeah,
the parking lot attendant kept going up, and I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen here?
yeah,
And then like the racist aspect of like he
yeah,
was
yeah,
so appreciative at the start with how he treated him,
yeah.
and then he had to be an a-hole to like get him to go away.
Uh,
Like it was so tense. So
yeah,
like some of the social commentary I think still holds up pretty well. So I would say half and half, so to speak. But
I pretty much agree 100%. I think there are parts of this film that hold up, but definitely, um, you know, it's very, very dated, I guess, in terms of presentation. Because again, when you're talking about screenplay, like I don't know who the narrator is. You know what I
I
mean?
think it was Sterling Hayden.
Did it ever say it was him?
No, maybe I'm just imagining that, but it sounded a little bit like him.
But I think that's what, like, again, if I were to remake this film today, I think I would make it him. And then because you can kind of make that the full story, you know what I mean? And you can
Yeah.
finish it off. I forgot to add, like, one of my favorite things about this film is actually the ending. And um, you know, this is definitely spoiler because you guys, if you haven't seen this movie, that's on you. But that fucking dog, man.
Right
That
there. Yeah.
yeah, fucking dog. I laughed because it I thought it worked. I mean it I think again, I think in today's filmmaking it would have been a little tighter in terms of like execution,
Yeah.
but overall I like the point of that and just the
Some
circumstance.
rich Karen with her stupid handbag dog,
Yeah,
Sebastian or whatever.
just throws away 2 mil.
Yeah, that's rude. I agree. I thought the ending was good. And in a way, they were all so crappy to each other that like nobody getting away with anything. Like yeah, it was kind of poetic in a way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay. I've already mentioned a few contemporary comparisons. I'm gonna add one more, and then I'll let you go. The other contemporary comparison that I thought of, and I don't think the full thing of it is, but just Point Break. When he put on the mask, that's the first thing I thought of was like, is that Nixon? But then of course it's like it's way before Nixon
Yeah.
was alive. But he look the mask, you can kind of see it there. I mean,
Yeah,
it just reminded me of the Point Break robbery when they all were wearing the president's mask. So,
for sure.
but what other movies did you get reminded of when you're watching?
That's a scary mask, by the way.
Yeah,
Ocean's 11, I agree with that. The one that it was
that's like the easiest one. Like
super
literally,
easy.
this is like, yeah.
Another one that really resonated with me, especially because of the sporting event heist aspect of it, was The Town.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
really got like town vibes from this film for sure.
yeah, for sure. We should have done that as a list. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. Oh,
Heist,
yeah.
heist movies. Um, yeah, yeah. I think Ocean's 11. I think is like almost not scene for scene or anything like that, but just
No, super same vibes.
plot wise, and then again with the non-linear. Um, yeah, because I think the one thing they would change today is some of the planning aspect, like they did in Ocean's 11. You would show that ahead of time, and then you're showing the execution
Yeah.
versus just kind of no planning and you don't really know what's happening, and then you're going back and forth. I think that's what made it a little clunky, but
But I feel like the heist at Fenway and The Town had to draw so much inspiration from this.
oh,
There's
absolutely, yeah,
so many similarities.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think the town's a great one, and then like you're saying, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, obviously those are huge influences. So
Yeah.
again, this movie you can definitely see was an influence on many filmmakers. And then should this movie be remade today, and who should it star?
I think so. For a lot of the reasons we mentioned, I think we've seen similar movies to this made today. I
Yeah,
think, I mean, you could literally make basically scene for scene remake of the film. All of it still exists,
with Ocean's 11 cast,
right? Like all of it still exists. Like there's
like
still horse
George
tracks.
Clooney's the guy.
Yeah, and the track still takes cash. So I mean, I think you could redo it. Yeah, I mean, you could use the whole Ocean's 11 cast. I was trying to think about it. Like Sterling Hayden seemed giant, and so I looked up his height. He's 6'5". So I was trying to think of like who would be a good person. And I've already talked about Vince Vaughn in some ways, but he wasn't perfect. To me, there's a few different people, but I kind of thought like Jason Segel could do a good job. Like in some ways, Sterling Hayden was like conniving, but he was also a little bit of a doofus
Yeah,
in some ways. Which for me, Jason Segel gives that. Like he can be serious, but he's also a little bit
it's
goofy.
Jason Segel.
Siegel, sorry,
Yeah,
Siegel.
Steven
Um,
Seagal,
Steven Seagal,
Jason Segel. Yeah.
Jason Siegel.
We were saying it. I'm
Um,
like who?
sorry,
Steven?
Jason Siegel. Yeah, from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That
Yeah.
guy. Um, I think he could pull it off. And then I was trying to think of like obviously there's a bunch of different characters. The one character, he's a classic noir guy, George, the sad sack husband of the woman that's so conniving.
Oh, right.
He's in a ton of different movies. But he's also like super important in this film. And
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like who could play him. I was kind of landing on like Ben Mendelsohn, who I
Okay.
think
I can see that.
like he can go both ways. Like he can be a strong character. He can also be a little bit, sad sacky. So to me, he was, I think he could be good.
Yeah, I thought William H. Macy for that character because he kind of the guy
He
just
looks
reminded me of.
identical. That would be a good one.
Yeah,
He looks
I
so
was like,
similar.
oh, this is William H. Macy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's why I have for that one.
Only because he's a little bit older at this point. I didn't, but I agree.
Starring in this one, honestly, I think you can literally pick. I didn't really care about the height so much because I don't think that actually played a
Yeah.
factor as much. So I'm not too concerned about that. But I mean, I can see George Clooney doing this. It's like whoever buys this script, I feel like you're okay. You're the leading man. I don't feel like the leading man was so like again. I can see Kevin Costner doing it. So it just depends on the age you want to do this
Yeah.
and who's writing or directing this, and then he's picking his guy. You know what I mean? If it's Ben Affleck directing this, then I could see Matt Damon starring in this. You know what I mean?
That
So
David could be. Yeah, I mean,
But
Ocean's 11. Well, Matt Damon could be great.
so just yeah, I can go a million different routes with that one. Again, I don't think this movie, besides some of those side characters who had certain personality traits, um, I didn't feel like the main character was so like. Again, I think a lot of it's the looks of people.
He was one of the most bland main characters in any movie.
Like the guy that gets in the fight, the Russian guy. I
That guy
feel
was awesome.
I feel like that one you're getting some sort of WWE star. You can do John Cena. You can do, The Rock's probably too expensive for that role, but
Yeah.
um, you can just pick any sort of large wrestler type guy or Colin McGregor or Conor McGregor. Like if you
Yeah.
ever want to do a movie, like that would be an excellent role for him because it's not a ton of talking, so you don't need him to be the most amazing actor, but then he'd come in and just kick ass. He can be the drunk guy at the bar, you know what I mean? Because
Andre the Giant would have been awesome if he was alive.
oh yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, this movie again just depends on the time period. Um, you can go a lot of different ways on this. Um, awesome. And then yeah, so let's move into our list and we'll wrap this up. But top five film noir films. We'll do Snake 5-1. Why don't you go ahead and give me your number five?
My number five is a movie that I saw for the first time in college in film class I had, and it was more about the director, and we saw a couple of his films, but is Jacques Tournier, or you say that? I mispronounced Jason Segel, so who knows?
I've heard the name.
Jacques Tournier, and he is called Out of the Past, and starring Robert Mitchum, who we just saw in El Dorado a few weeks ago, but a much younger, much suaver Robert Mitchum in that. And great movie. Lots of twists and turns, as most noirs have.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's beautifully shot. Like Tournier is a master of direction in terms of like the cinematography and the photography. So
Nice.
beautiful film.
Awesome. I went with Hitchcock for my number five. I went with Suspicion,
Mm,
and that's starring Cary Grant. And that's on like a luxury boat, and it's kind of like a heist movie on a luxury boat. I just saw that recently because I went through tried to watch a few Hitchcock films,
yeah,
and so a lot of his film noir ones I haven't seen yet because I haven't really seen the 40s ones, seen a lot of the 50s ones, but I
yeah,
did see Suspicion. I did enjoy that one. So that's my number five. Again, I got to get better on my film noir game. I totally admit that. So that was my number five. And then number four, I was surprised to see this on here, but it is one of my favorite older films, and it's Sunset Boulevard.
mm,
And this is a movie I've seen multiple times. And again, I think it's just a really well done, cool old Hollywood type of a movie. And if you've never seen it, it's one of those again, like when you see it in a I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille. Like everyone's kind of heard that line.
yeah.
So again, like when you're talking about scenes that are in the all time film history, this movie has it. And so Sunset Boulevard for me is number four.
Nice. My number four is starring Joan Crawford. It's Mildred Pierce.
Hmm.
They remade it recently in HBO
Yeah,
miniseries with
Kate Winslet.
yeah. The original's great. The new one is good too, but the original is great. Joan Crawford,
Yeah,
I'm
I didn't
not
realize that was a film noir.
yeah, I don't always love her, but she's phenomenal in this. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about it is that it as I mentioned earlier, feel like female characters were often sort of afterthought. Like they advanced
Yeah,
the plot, but they didn't really give much thought to character development.
yeah,
She's the main character in this, and so it turns a little bit of the noir on its head by having a kind of such a strong and well developed female character. But it's really really good. Really good film. So Mildred Pierce, number four. Number three for me is Kiss Me Deadly, starring Ralph Meeker. And it is a very interesting, almost kind of like the first anti-hero, in a way. Like he's a private eye. It's a lot of the same tropes of noir, but he's a bad man and he's tough. And so that one's interesting and has a crazy late 50s Cold War, post World War II twist at the very end that like out of the blue, out of the clouds, but it's kind of interesting and adds an interesting aspect to it.
Nice. And then my number three is going to be Chinatown. Again, like one of the films I've seen multiple times. Jack Nicholson. Uh, this is about, LA, water and power and money and corruption. Excellent film. Obviously, it's on a lot of all-time lists, not just film noir, but in general. And uh, this is not the film that put Nicholson on the map, but this definitely is Nicholson in his prime A-list, which helped him get courtside Laker seats. And I believe Chinatown might be his most profitable film besides Batman, I think.
It's a it's a great film, and he's great
Yeah.
in it. Like that scene at the beginning when he's like getting the shave and like it's great.
Yeah. Excellent. And then my number two is Double Indemnity. Again, like when you're talking classic film noirs, this one is one I definitely saw in film school, but I've seen it a couple times and I've always enjoyed this one. This one I just thought was just a good film. Like I said, it holds up very well, entertaining, and good story, good plot, the whole nine. And if you've never seen it, I highly, highly recommend. Again, this is like when you're talking about film noir, it's this one and another one that are considered the creme de la creme of film noir.
Yeah, number two is Double Indemnity for me as well. You said most of it. Great movie based on a lot of LA vibes. Um, the the actual cinematography in it, the locations that they filmed in, just really great movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And your number one?
My number one is, and I've mentioned it a few times, although I was embarrassingly did not attribute the correct director. It is The Big Sleep. Bogart. I could have had five Bogart films in my top five. I tried to make sure I only had one.
Yeah.
I'll leave you to your number one because it could be a Bogart film. But Big Sleep for me is amazing. Lauren Bacall is like 19 or 20 and has the charisma and chutzpah of a 20-year film veteran in this movie. And she has bogey wrapped around her finger, both in the film and it turns out in real life. Howard Hawks' direction is great. So it's an awesome movie. Big Sleep.
Nice. Yeah, my number one is probably number one for a lot of people, and it's Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
Again, like that's the preeminent film noir film. I think it's the one that actually like invented the term film noir, right?
Yep.
I'm
It's
not mistaken. But like I said, I haven't seen a ton of film noir. I don't even know if I've seen 10, unless again you get looser on the definitions. But I've definitely seen Maltese Falcon. I own it, seen it multiple times, and it's a film I always watch, probably at least once a year, if not every other year. And I love it. I think again it really works well. It's everything you love about 1950s cinema. I think it's still again still holds up very, very well. The reason why it's never been remade because you can't really do a whole lot to.
yeah, Sydney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's one of my favorites too, and I could have easily put that up there instead of Big Sleep, but I only want to choose one bogey.
No,
So
I'm glad you choose Big Sleep. So
I'm glad you put it on the list.
I need to see Big Sleep. I haven't seen that one. Um, but looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, I like your list. There's a lot of movies I need to see. Um, and we'll definitely be checking out some more film noir films in this movie club. Next week, that's gonna wrap it up for us. Next week, we're gonna be reviewing Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, and that's from 1974. That's directed by Michael Cimino. He directed Deer Hunter, as well as the amazing monstrosity of a film called Heaven's Gate, which I still have not finished seeing yet. Have you ever seen that?
No, it's in my queue.
We should maybe that'll be
Yeah,
the film we watch after that because
it's pre-80, right? Like late 70s.
it's I think it's like 1980.
Okay, yeah, we could do that one for sure.
But that film I feel like it could be like because it just was a box office disaster because it cost so much. I feel like the film itself may not be as bad. And so I don't know. I wouldn't mind that film for the following one. So
Yeah.
Anyway, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, you can see that on Amazon Prime. Make sure you check that out. Guys, if you ended up seeing The Killing, want to hear your review as well, type it in the comments. And then also give us your best noir film, or you can do top 5 if you want to do top 5. But yeah, go ahead and comment below. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Help us grow. We appreciate you all. Thanks again, Drew, for joining.
Always.
And with that, Drew, that is a cut. Thanks, guys.